So DeCourcy Bridge is a little teeny wooden bridge, and you go and you sit on the bridge and you turn your car off. And when you turn your car off, you honk your horn 3 times, you turn your lights on and off 3 times, and then Liz mysteriously appears in the swamp holding her head in her hand, still guarding the master's treasure. She was a good slave even up until 2018. She's still guarding that treasure.
Big Liz was a slave, and when a plantation owner that lived on the banks of the Transquaking somewhere, we don't know exactly where, but you know, that he was involved with the Confederate Army and that he had something to do with the money of the treasury. And you know, when the Yankees were threatening the area and threatening the money, that he, you know, quickly gathered up the gold and, you know, went to bury it. And of course he took his slave, had her bury the gold. They nailed a spike in a tree, and then he killed her.
So the true story about Big Liz is this. So the family that owned the farm where this happened and the tree was, they sold the farm, family moved away, some other family bought the farm, and this is logging country. So we still have 3 lumber companies in the county today. And so lumbering is a very big thing still today here. So years back after that, in I don't know, somebody say 1930, 1940, a logging company goes in there to log down the forest so the family could make some money out of it. And when they do, they take it and they put it through that diamond blade saw and they hit a spike. So that just proves to everybody around here that there really was a spike in the tree, but nobody knows where the tree came from. The loggers just cut them down and took them there, so we don't know where the treasure is. So all of the lore and all of the friends and family that we know that have seen something is because Liz is still guarding the treasure. That's the whole point. She's still out there guarding it today because she was a good slave. So she's caught in between life and death, guarding his treasure.
And I personally have not ever had any negative experiences or anything of that nature, but I know this for sure, is that one thing that's consistent is that people for generations probably have passed on the fact or the stories that there is something in Greenbrier Swamp. Now, nobody knows what that something is, but anybody that goes in Greenbrier Swamp, they always come out with a feeling. You know, in fact, me even standing here telling the story right now gives me goosebumps.
My name is Casey Meredith, and I've grown up here in the area of Bucktown. I live on the Transquaking, which is the river that goes to the Greenbrier Swamp. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
I live in Bucktown, Maryland, actually in Greenbrier Swamp. Greenbrier Swamp is a really, really spooky, very, what's the word? Can't think of the word, but eerie, very, very eerie place to be and live, especially at night. There's a lot of noises back there that I cannot explain. And I've been living here my whole life, and some things go on back there that really just can't be explained.
My name's Keith Morris. I'm a local. I live up here on Bucktown Road, which is only a few miles from the actual Greenbrier Swamp. When we say Greenbrier Swamp it's a huge area. Even though our roads run through, they run through the swamp. And the swamp is, some areas have been logged previously, then some of it hasn't been. Biggest part, one of the biggest landowners of the Greenbrier Swamp is the federal government, Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge. And that's where I come in. I'm retired now, been retired for 3 years as a federal firefighter. But my job was to go into these areas that they had purchased and cut new boundary lines and keep the boundary lines cleaned up and and all kind of maintenance things. So I was telling some of the local guys, some of the locals here, and they said, man, are you sure you want to go back there by yourself and do this? And I kind of looked at him and said, what are you talking about? And he said, man, the place back there is haunted. Of course, some of the guys that were there at the refuge had been around too. Some of the older fellas said, yeah, man, it's strange things happen down there. I just shrugged it off. You know, I'm not superstitious. So we get all of our equipment over there on this one track, that's part of the Greenbrier Swamp, and we start working. And I cut to about 12 o'clock, and I kind of stopped, and I kind of noticed I was having a hard job seeing the instrument panels in my piece of equipment. It was that dark in this swamp. And I knew when I left that morning, there was no signs of rain, no thunderstorms, no cloud. It was a crystal blue day. And I'm going, man. So I shut the machine off, I get out of it, and I walk outside, and I'm looking up, and just eerie, the trees. I never even paid attention when I was in the machine, but I looked at these trees, and they had these limbs that were all hanging down and bent up and crooked like an old homestead like. And I'm going, man, this is interesting. So I sit around there, and then all of a sudden this feeling like somebody's looking at you. And I walk around behind the machine, and I look, and I'm not scared. You know, I'm the type of person, I'm not scared of anything. And I walk around the front of the machine, and I just stop. And I was just sitting there. It was just as quiet as it could be. Not a bird chirping, nothing. And I can't see through the top of the canopy, it's that thick. But then I started taking notice, the ground. This lush, green moss. And the moss was upside the trees. And like grapevine, dead grapevine hanging through the trees. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, I've come into something here. Maybe I'm off course. And I looked at my map, and the map says not. So I'm standing outside there, and all of a sudden, now I'm in a closed canopy. This cold, chilling breeze come right through. And the stuff that I had cut up in the front started twirling like a dust tornado or whatever. And I'm going, man, what is going on here now? There's no wind around, and this thing is going across my path and going through here. So I said, I'm gonna get back into the piece of machinery. So I crawled back up in the piece of machinery, and I sit there, and I just watched, and none of the leaves moved, nothing. Just this freak thing went through. But it raised the hair up on the back of my back, and that's just something was there. So I said, okay, gotta go. Let's get moving. So I started working again, and I started cutting. I guess I'd cut about, it's 12 o'clock, so I cut about 2 o'clock. And I said, well, I'm gonna call it for today, because it's gonna take me a couple hours to get back out. I was cutting along, and all of a sudden, man, I come to this like dead tree, a lot of brush around it, and I knew it was kind of in our way, and I started cutting. Next thing I know, there's this huge stone. It's about that tall, that big around, and this thing is planted down in the ground, and it's like out of granite, but it's real jagged, nothing smooth, just real jagged. And I'm thinking, now this is not a corner marker. What is this? You know, out here in the middle of nowhere. It caught my attention, and I cut all around it, and I got thinking, I'm going, you know, I know a long time ago, hundreds of years, this may have been a plantation of some kind, and they had things like that, but this stone was so big that it took 3 or 4 good-sized men to put this thing in the ground. That's what it was. So I left, come back next day. I went in there, and I talked to my supervisor about it, and told him, I said, man, I've run into this big stone. I said, is this supposed to be a corner marker or something? And he said, I don't ever recall one being back there, and don't say anything on the plats and stuff. So anyway, we move on, and as we start getting really back into this swamp, it started really having an effect on me into this closed canopy, because it just seems like days when I came through the one spot that I had this, whatever it was that crossed my path, and then I found a stone, and then that day, the next day I came there and I stopped by that stone. I got out of the machine. I said, I'm gonna really look at this. And I dug down around it, and there was like no end to it. And that daggone breeze came again. Now, it's calm, but the breeze, when it went through, it was only like in a 10-foot path. That's how wide it was. That's how I picked it up. It wasn't blowing all the trees. It was just like a 10-foot, 8-foot, 10-foot path. And it came in, and it blew, and it come around in front of my machine, and then it just kind of went on up the path that I went. I said, man, okay, maybe this is part of Big Lizz in here, and her spirit's running around here, and I might be getting close to something that I'm not supposed to be getting close to. So later on that day, as I was in there working, we were down, I mean, I was way back in this place. And again, the trees, I couldn't put my arms around some of the stuff, and they were just that creepy looking, with stuff hanging off of them and the moss and everything. And I stopped. I said, you know, I'm a big boy. I shouldn't be scared of nothing. That's whatever's going on out here, it's got to be a reason for this. I got out of the machine. Of course, I had to run with lights on, because that's how dark it was in there in the middle of the day. And this day was same thing, crystal clear, nothing. I got out of the machine, and I started walking down that path, and I said, okay, I'm gonna see what's gonna go on here. And I walked down that path, and that daggone cold wind come right there and just come right over me. And I just stopped. The hair raised up on my arm, and I'm going, man, what is going on here? And this time, the wind, it was steady. It was a steady wind, but it was only in that 8 to 10 foot path. And I just stood there and I watched that path, and I watched it, and it did a loop, and it come back up, and it went through some blueberry bushes, and it come back around, and it just come back toward my machine. I said, okay, there's something here. I could just tell somebody, you know how you get this feeling that something is looking at you. I said, this is it, I'm done. So I got back in the machine, and I continued on going. And of course, I went back and told my guys, some of the guys there with it, and they laughed at me. But no joking matter, there is something, some kind of spirit back there in that swamp, because them things just don't happen day after day, that same little thing. So that's my story. I truly I believe that it was something to do with Big Lizz. It could have been other spirits that were guarding that treasure. They claim that it's buried back there somewhere, but we've never found it. So that's about it. That's all I'm going to do.